We'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the Redistricting California Collaborative and the California League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, we thank you for joining us during your lunch break, if you're taking your lunch, and being part of a conversation with Commissioner Parvenu to learn more about what it takes to be on the California State Redistricting Commission. My name is Alejandra Ponce de León, and I am with the Advancement Project California and co-convener along with Common Cause California of the Redistricting California Collaborative. And I will be your host and moderator. With me are also Rey Lopez-Calderon, who is the Executive Director of Common Cause California, Margarita Fernandez with the California State Auditor's Office, and the current Commissioner, Parvenu, with the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. So the purpose of today's conversation, it's really about, engaging all of you, all that are on this call, and to motivate participants to apply to be on the Citizens Redistricting Commission. Our goals are for participants to feel more informed and have answers to their top questions and concerns. A moment here, because there's some folks that are not muted. Want to make sure that you mute yourselves so that we are able to get this clear sound of everything. Perfect. Cool. Sorry for that pause. But yeah, so again, our goals for today is for participants on this call, on this video chat, to feel more informed and have answers to their top questions and concerns as they're looking to apply to be on the Citizens Redistricting Commission, that participants feel a strong sense of urgency and motivation to do so, and also understand why it matters, who's on the commission, and the impact it will have in California long term. And also for participants, lastly, for them to be much more knowledgeable about the Redistricting California Collaborative and the State Auditor's Office, and see us as a resource to connect moving forward. So
Alice Huffman joined us.
All right. So folks that are just joining, please remain muted on your end. If you're able to, please mute yourself so that way we don't have any background noise in the back. Thank you so much for everybody's cooperation. So today's program, we are going to be, I'll be beginning the conversation today and setting the frame for today's conversation and providing a brief overview of who the Redistricting Collaborative is. We'll then have Rey Lopez-Calderon provide the historical and current context of the Citizens Redistricting Commission and underscore why it matters to have a Citizens Redistricting Commission that is reflective of California's population. We'll then switch gears and hear from Margarita Fernandez provide an overview of the Citizens Redistricting Commission application and selection process. And then we will be engaging, or I'll be engaging, Commissioner Parvenu in a conversation to learn more about his experiences applying and being on the commission. And finally, we'll engage in a Q&A. We'll open it up for Q&A with all our panelists from the questions you submit via chat. And so a few housekeeping rules. So everyone, with the exception to the speakers, will remain muted. So this video chat is actually being recorded, and the link will be provided soon after to share with others. Throughout the event, please feel free to chat your questions. And so you will be chatting your questions to my colleague, Alejandra Ramirez Zarate. And so just make sure that when you go open the chat tool, you select her name to chat your questions so she receives them rather than having it be sent to everyone on this screen. So again, special thanks to the California League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, which is a member of the Redistricting California Collaborative, who made this event possible and helped to coordinate everything. So let's dive into this event. So joining the Citizens Redistricting Commission is an opportunity for each of us to strengthen our democracy by exercising our right and ensuring all communities in California are being represented. It's this vision that brought together the Redistricting California Collaborative 10 years ago and once again today. The Redistricting California Collaborative is a collection of statewide and regional organizations working together to empower demographically and geographically underrepresented communities to fully participate in the Citizens Redistricting Commission's redistricting process. Our goal is to ensure that all California residents, especially low-income communities, communities of color, and historically underrepresented communities are engaged, informed, and empowered to participate throughout the redistricting process, both as applicants to the Citizens Redistricting Commission and as active participants during the district line drawing process. The upcoming 2020 census and the 2021 California redistricting process go hand in hand. We all need to be counted and be heard, reflected, and represented. That's the heart of our democracy. There is so much at stake. If we do not get a diverse group of people to be on the 14-member California Citizens Redistricting Commission, many underrepresented communities may lose their voice and their vote, resulting in unfair and unequal representation of communities that will undermine the funding, the resources, and policy solutions your community needs and deserves to promote a better quality of life. That is why, people from all walks of life must represent every resident in California to draw fair district lines and ensure all voices are heard. For each of you listening on this video chat, your talent, values, and knowledge of your community are necessary to create fair maps. Your leadership will ensure every person has a voice and is heard. Every person is empowered and engaged to help draw fair district lines, and that district lines, elected officials, and future policies reflect California's diversity and are responsive to the needs and priorities of residents, especially the most marginalized and underrepresented. To further deepen ourselves in the historical and current context about why redistricting matters and why you should apply, I'd like to pass it over to Rey Lopez-Calderon, Executive Director of Common Cause California.
Hi, thank you for that, Alejandra. So just first off, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. If you can give me 2 seconds to switch. Hold on. Or at least I think I am.
You may not be able to because I'm the host, and so I would need to share my screen for others to see.
Okay, well then I'll work from this then. Sorry about that. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Rey Lopez-Calderon, and I'm Executive Director of California Common Cause. I just really would like to kind of focus on why we're doing this and kind of what we're up against. And Ale gave a pretty good description of sort of the, why it's important to have different voices heard on this process. But I think it's also important to understand that this statewide commission, the California Redistricting Commission for California, was really a citizens-led movement. This is something that did not come out of the legislature. It was not something that, in general, the powers that be, as it were, really wanted on the agenda. It took a lot of work from many of the organizations that you saw on the list of the collaborative who were here the last time around. Took a major statewide initiative. It cost millions of dollars to put out. We had to get a lot of different communities from all over the state to unite around an issue. It was complicated. There were lots of concerns about how the commission would come out. Would it be representative of our communities across the board? Would it represent the API community, the Latino community, the African American community? We knew that would be a challenge unless community organizations and neighborhood organizations and statewide organizations who service these communities, unless they really pushed to get members on the commission, we might not have a representative commission. So California has generally been a success across the country, partly because we have one of the only models that is like wholly independent. Other models tend to have like some number of appointees from like the governor's office or from the legislature, usually because they're required by constitution to do that, state constitutions. But California really is a sort of shining example of an independent, wholly citizens-run commission. So what does that mean? What it really means is that people have to go through a process that really looks at not just qualifications, and the state auditor will talk a little bit about qualifications, I believe, but it's also just about, are these people fair-minded? Are they, do they really represent the community they say they do? And so there are requirements for our model. For example, you need a certain amount of seats for Democrats, you need a certain amount of seats for Republicans, you need a certain amount of seats for non-party preference or other parties. And you can't have a conflict of interest. You can't be a legislator or the relative of a legislator. And again, Margarita Fernandez will get deeper into that. But my point is that we've set it up so it's very hard to game the system, very hard to be tied to any current political sort of power. It's really about independent redistricting. We have an amazing, diverse commission right now. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that all of our organizations are again activated and that we are pushing people to apply, asking people to apply, engaging people. We have just had a workshop in San Diego on Saturday and one in San Jose on Sunday where the auditor attended, and we've had commissioners join just like this, but in person. As much as we can, we want to make sure people are represented. Margarita may talk about the actual demographics, but I'll just give you sort of a preview. Right now, of all the applications, which I believe is over 6,000 now, we have a majority of those applicants are white males. That is something that we kind of know a priori that tends to be the pipeline for the commission without any recruitment, just sort of straight, you put it on TV, you put it on an ad, and that's generally your pipeline. And we have really need more representation in every other community in California. It's also just it's just male heavy. That's another thing. There's a lot of men that have applied. Even within like for example, just on the party level. So if you look at Republicans, the majority of people applying have been white men and very few Republican women. Just really interesting numbers. Inland Empire is doing a little bit better than others in terms of number of applicants, but San Francisco, the Bay Area in general is actually doing not as well as we expected. So it's important for all of us, each of us, to look at every community and make sure that all of us are doing a push to get people to apply. In terms of the context of what we're facing right now, as people know, people have been watching the news and people have been involved in these communities where, there's been a pretty strong attack on the process of the census, which, we always have a difficult time counting people. Ever since I can remember, every 10 years, and I'm getting old now, it's always been hard to count a lot of communities, and it doesn't help when people are being attacked directly, and then the census is being gamed with, propositions for citizenship questions and other things. And so this is a time where we have to make sure the community feels comfortable and that they're involved in the processes at a time when government really isn't presenting itself as a friend. So this is why trusted people in the communities matter. This is why those of us who work on a day-to-day basis with people have to make sure that people understand that this is something to give voice to people. It's not something to take away their voice. Again, this started as a citizens commission. We want this to be a citizens commission. This has to be from every walk of life. I guess the last thing I'll say, because I only have a few minutes, but the last thing I'll say is that the Redistricting Commission is part of a larger movement across the country. We have redistricting commissions, not just at the state level like California, but people have them at the county level, at the city level. California is a pioneer in this. We have sort of set the standard across the country for independent redistricting. So it's not only just that we want to make this commission good, but we also want to make sure that California is still a beacon to the rest of the country to say, hey, you don't have to have partisan, gerrymandering in every state. And even though recently the Supreme Court said that they were going to wash their hands of this issue, they did say one thing that was really awesome, which was, it's up to the states. You guys are doing commissions, you're doing these independent redistricting projects, keep doing that. And so for us, we were going to keep doing it anyways, but it's good to at least know that that's something that's still on the table. So for us, California, we are both getting people to the statewide commission. We are looking at local districts, and as a model and as a leader, the rest of the country is looking at us. So thank you so much for being part of this and for joining.
Cool. Thank you, Ray, for laying out the context, in terms of historically what brought the Citizens Redistricting Commission, but also currently what's been happening in the landscape with census, the Supreme Court cases, and why it matters for folks to apply. So just a reminder, so as folks are listening in, please chat any questions that come up for any of the speakers to Alejandra Ramirez Zarate, so she can take your questions and we can pull on them at the end. So now I would like to turn it over to Margarita Fernandez from the California State Auditor's Office. And then while you are beginning, I'm going to go ahead and share your PowerPoint.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alejandra. I just want to make sure that the voice is coming over correctly. I know we were having trouble earlier.
Sounds good, Christopher.
Sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you. So, a little bit about our office. I'm probably going to go off of my slide presentation a little bit, but everybody talked about how important redistricting is, so I probably don't need to go over that with you, but like Ray talked about, and so did Alejandra, about how important it is for people to participate in that, and not just because of what is going on in other parts of the country, but just because California is one of the few states that has an independent redistricting commission. And so we all have the opportunity to do that and to participate in this once in a decade opportunity. And this is a project or a task that needs to be done and that will actually touch every community in California. And so it's not every time that you get a chance to do something like this. So it really is time to do so, and time to put your hat in the ring and try to be there to be a voice for your community. So I'll get started a little bit on my presentation. Like I said, the redistricting aspect we've already discussed how important that is. I'm a little new to this, so do somebody else is handling my PowerPoint, or do I need to do that?
Just say next, and I will.
Okay, next one. Sorry. So if you go forward to the next one, I covered a little bit about what everybody else has and why it's important to California. So let's go on to the next one, next slide. And we'll talk about a little bit about what our role is in the whole process and why they've stressed, or Ray stressed, how independent the process is. The process is independent from the beginning, even during this application and selection process. Our office is, I'm not sure how many people know about us, but our office is an independent, nonpartisan entity. And so typically we conduct audits of state agencies and local governments, but we report our results in an independent, nonpartisan manner. It really is just about what the results show. So every 10 years with relation to this project, we do conduct the outreach. We're responsible for the outreach. We're not the only ones. Of course, there's many good groups like yours that are helping us. And that is one thing we learned from 10 years ago, is that it is so critical that groups such as yours, such as all those that are participating in the coalition, help us to get the word out to all the communities to ensure it's an inclusive process. So we're responsible for that part, the regulations, of course, and then for actually going through the entire process. So if we go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about what the commission will do, and actually Mr. Parvenu will probably be a really good source for this as well. But the 14-member commission, as Ray referred to it, is by law required to have 5 members who are from the largest California political party, and then 5 who are from the second largest political party, and then 4 who belong to neither of those 2 parties or do not have a party preference. So 5 are Democrats, 5 are Republicans, and 4 are registered with a different party or no party preference. So they will be drawing or redrawing the lines for the state Senate, the state Assembly, the State Board of Equalization, and also the congressional districts as well. And I know it seems like a really long process because we're already starting on this, but it is kind of a process that, as Ray said, there's a lot of controls, I guess, that are built into the process to ensure or to try to get the politics out of who is actually drawing the lines. So we've started already our application process, and we have to have our commission formed by August 2020. So if we go to the next slide, we just a little bit about what the commission will be doing, and just so people know that they don't just arbitrarily draw lines. They do have to draw lines that are nonpartisan. They have certain criteria for it. So it's not like they can go out of the box and just implement something. They do have to develop the reasonably equal populations. They have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and they have to really listen to the public. They have to have a lot of public meetings and listen to communities of interest and try to maintain those communities. Also, so there's a few other criteria there, as you'll see on the slide, but mostly that's what the commission will be doing. They will be meeting with the public and getting their perspective in drawing the lines themselves. The commission itself will be its own entity, and they will develop their practices and their protocols, and they will determine how they will conduct their business as well. Our office is responsible for this portion of it, the application selection process. We're also responsible for ensuring that the commission is operational. It could start fully functional, and then our role in the process is over. So we'll get them fully functional. We'll make sure that they have some office space, that they have some of the infrastructure in place so that they can start doing their work as soon as they can. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what the qualifications are for commissioner. So the absolute minimum eligibility requirements are that that the commissioners must have voted in at least 2 of the last 3 statewide elections. They also have to have been affiliated with their party or no party preference. They couldn't have changed it for the last 5 years, actually from July 2015. So it's 5 years from then when they would be appointed as commissioner. And there are some conflicts of interest that were built into the law or the initiative when it first was put on the ballot. And then it's really to try to keep the politics out of who is drawing the lines. So just to give you an idea of what some of the conflicts or some of the things that would make you ineligible for participating on the commission would be, for example, if you work for or are a consultant to or are appointed to a position from perhaps an elected official, or if you work for the legislature or congressional member as well, you're not eligible to apply. And these extend also to your family members because, it kind of makes sense as far as you're trying to make sure that someone doesn't have a bias or could be influenced to draw lines in certain ways. So so again, if you work for or you contract for a member of the legislature or the governor or a congressional office, you're not eligible to participate. Also, if you've contributed more than $2,500 to any California congressional, state, or local candidate for elective office, you're also not eligible to participate. This is per calendar year. The other thing would be if you've been a registered lobbyist, federal, state, or local registered lobbyist for the last 10 years, you're not eligible to participate. But the important thing in this is to remember that if anyone has a particular question about their eligibility, they can go to our website, shapecaliforniafuture.auditor.ca.gov, and they can send us an email, and our attorneys are responding to the emails and the questions right away. So they'll know right away if they're eligible or not to participate. So if we go to the next one, we'll talk a little bit about what we are actually looking for in an applicant. And these again were in the initiative when the law was established, when it was approved. So what we're looking for are individuals who have strong analytical skills, sorry about that, and the ability to be impartial, and also an appreciation for California's diversity. Now, when we talk about analytical skills, we're talking about not that you have to know how to draw maps, and not that you have to have all the answers, because again, the commission will be hiring people who will help them, attorneys, map drawers, and so forth. But we're looking for people who have analytical skills, or who can take criteria and take information that someone's giving them and make an analysis and form a conclusion, draw some conclusion on it that would benefit California. Someone who has good communication skills, because you will be meeting with the public, and you'll be working with on a 14-member commission, people who you've never worked with before, and who have ideas and views from different aspects. So it's really more of demonstrating how strong your analytical skills are. And then the ability to be impartial. The ability to be impartial doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have my own views, because of course everybody has their own views on different things. But what it means is more of, you have the ability to put your views aside, to listen to the public, to listen to other members on your commission, to look at the information that's being presented, to also look at what the attorney's giving you, and to be able to draw conclusions and draw lines that really will benefit California. And then there's the appreciation for California's diversity. We all know that California is a large state, geographically, demographically, gender, economically. We have so many different diverse aspects in our state, and having the appreciation for that is understanding how all these different aspects really benefit California. And so we're looking for applicants who have an appreciation for that, and can demonstrate some of the things that they've done that demonstrate you have the appreciation for California's diversity. So if we go to the next slide, I'm trying to make sure I stay on time. We are in the process of receiving applications for this position, or to be a member of the commission. There are, we have actually, let's see, they're due, the initial application is due August 9th. And it's a 2-phase application process, so you might think, oh, I can wait and catch the next phase, but really you can't. There's an initial application portion that really only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And it's really more of a self-identifying, trying to go through the eligibility requirements to determine whether or not you're tentatively eligible. And that application period ends August 9th. And it's an online application. It's really easy to access. It's on shapecaliforniasfuture.auditor.ca.gov. And to be able to continue in that next part of the process, you have to complete that initial application. So it's really, really important that even if you're just thinking about it, you're not quite sure, that you get the initial application in so that you have a chance to continue in the process. Now, the second part of the application process is a supplemental application. It's more extensive, but it's really getting at the questions and trying to make sure that we are complying with the law, as far as ensuring that people who are on the commission don't have the political ties, and also that have those that have the analytical skills, the ability to be impartial, and also the appreciation for California's diversity. So I'll try to put the rest in a nutshell so that the next Mr. Parvenu can speak. But after that happens, after the supplemental application phase happens, we have an applicant review panel. One is a Democrat, one is a Republican, and one is belongs to neither of those two parties, that will actually be going through all the supplemental applications, and we'll have live public meetings that are live streamed. They have to make their decisions in a public setting, so the public will have the opportunity to provide input. They'll have opportunity to provide public comments throughout that whole period. And their ultimate job is to try to get the applicant pool down to 120 of the most qualified, 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, and 40 who belong to neither of those two parties, and then call them in for interviews. And then after that, they will determine which are the 60 of the most qualified, 20 in each of the subpools. Now, there is one piece where the legislature does have a little bit of a role. The 4 legislative leaders will receive those 60 names, and they will have the opportunity to strike 2 names, each of those. The leaders will have the opportunity to strike 2 names in each of those subpools, and then they will return it back to the state auditor. If they have exercised all their rights, we'll receive an applicant pool of 12 Democrats, 12 Republicans, and 12 that belong to neither of those two parties. Now, this next phase has a random factor to it. So the state auditor is required to randomly select or randomly draw the names of the first 8 commissioners, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 that belong to neither of those two parties. And then those first 8 will select the remaining 6. So when they select the remaining 6, they do have to consider the diversity of the commission. But there is this randomness of the whole process. And I believe that that is why it is really important that we have an applicant pool that is reflective of California, so that we have a higher chance of having a commission that is reflective of California. So I just I'll stop there, but just want to make sure that people know to submit that initial application, and it has to be done by August 9th. Just takes 5 to 10 minutes. You can do it on your mobile device. You can do it on your computer. You can even go into library and fill it out there. So thank you, and I will take questions later on. So.
Thank you, Margarita, for breaking down the process and what this is going to entail. And so now I want to open up the conversation with Commissioner Parvenu and have a chance to hear a bit more about, your experience applying and being selected on the Citizens Redistricting Commission. There are many questions already surfacing for current and potential applicants, and so we'll engage in a short conversation first with the hopes that we address some of those major questions off the bat. And then afterwards, I'll be reading some of the major questions that folks have chatted to my colleague Alejandra Ramirez for all of our speakers. So to start off this conversation, one of the major challenges for folks to apply is the doubt that maybe they are not good enough, that maybe they don't have all the skill sets, experiences, knowledge of what a commissioner should have. This is especially acute among communities of color and others that historically and still today are underrepresented in our democratic processes. As for yourself and also as a man of color, what inspired you to apply? What were the doubts you were grappling with? And where did you find the motivation and courage to move forward anyway as an applicant?
Well, thank you, Alejandra. First of all, I want to say greetings, everyone. And I want to start by saying this. I'm truly honored to be here and to share my experiences with you. This is such a tremendous process and project. And to know that we are all so better prepared this go around, from what I'm hearing, it gives me a great deal of contentment and pleasure to know that we're really prepared to take on this engagement and to make it even better than the first time around. So thank you all for that. I especially want to thank all the partners that participated in this process, the League of Conservation Voters, where I'm here in their office, the Advancement Project, and Kathy, I know you're out there. Thank you, and Common Cause, and California Forward. Too many names to mention. This is basically the extended family. The partners are part of this extended family, and it only worked, and I'm only here because of you all, of course, with the initiatives of 11 and 20, Props 11 and 20, But most importantly, I want to thank the people of California, the 6 million or so that voted for Prop 11, the 6 million or so that voted for Prop 20. I want to thank all of them because this is your commission. I'm your selected representative because I'm working in your behalf, and it's quite an honor to be in that position to do so. But to get to your question, though, Alejandra, basically, what my overall philosophy is that life is not a spectator sport. You have to participate. You have to be in the game, on the court, on the field, and not in the stands. And it's a civic and public duty to engage in opportunities like this when they appear. So anyone out there that's listening to I would say not be intimidated by the process, and don't think that if you have the qualifications and skills and you think that you have a shot at this, by all means, send in your application. My thought was I've always known about redistricting, but and I signed the petition back in 2008. But what motivated me to get involved is that I've known for a very long time that gerrymandering was a part of the whole process of voter suppression and basically a flaw in our democratic system. So as was mentioned before by so many others, and just this morning, when I heard about this process, I said, why not? Throw my hat in the ring and just see what happens. I didn't think I stood a chance, actually, because I knew that it was open to so many qualified candidates in the state and that the odds were astronomical. But I thought, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So when I heard about the recruitment process the last time around, I recall that it really, I listened to KGLH radio here in Los Angeles, and I saw an article in the Sentinel. So I said, well, I'll just apply and see what happens. What motivated me personally to get involved, I'm a child of the 60s, and I stand on the shoulders of giants that walk before me and open doors. So they were able to afford me opportunities to attend certain colleges and universities to get the training and background. So I came into this with the confidence and with the knowledge that I was qualified to take on this massive assignment. I came in with, I go back to the word confidence again. I was confident and prepared and trained to hang with the big boys, more or less, to basically give it my best shot. So basically, that's my motivation, to fulfill some of the requirements that I thought that I possibly could, and to use my skills to the best of my ability to benefit the people of California.
Perfect. Thank you, Andre.
Mm-hmm.
So the application process is very daunting, and each step engages applicants to demonstrate why they are a strong and qualified applicant. In looking back to each of the stages in the application and selection process, what more was the review panel looking for? Beyond, what Margarita shared in terms of having appreciation of the diversity, analytical skills, being impartial, what more is needed? And what were your strengths and unique attributes that enabled you to move forward at each stage of the selection process?
Well, daunting is the word, yes, daunting, and it can be very intimidating at the start, in the beginning. But it wasn't a progressive add-on for me in the application process, or for any of us. Once you clear your conflict of interest, and once the BSA, in our case, cleared the conflict of interest issue, did the background checks, and reviewed the supplemental applications, and we submitted our references and went through the interview process. That's it. You throw your cards out there and you let them fall where they may, and you just hope that you're able to be one of the persons that end up in the final category. in the final, groupings. So the strengths that I think that were unique to me, or what made me stand out, was that, well, I think it's my diverse background. I have a hodgepodge or a mismatch of different types of skills and training, some architecture and engineering, geography, a little this, a little that. And that's reflective also on my job occupations, being this, that, and the other, and working at various jobs. And I often wondered, hey, what's wrong with my situation? I mean, why can't I have a standard career with one job, 30 years, get my golden ring, retire, and be normal? I had all these various attributes and skills and experiences, but that turned out to work in my favor in this process. So my diverse background really, I think, was one of the things that made me different, or made my application stand out among some of the others. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I'm thinking, worked in my behavior and my best interest. We're getting further, for those out there that are considering this, we're getting further and further away from the traditional work setting, the traditional 9 to 5. So if you have any non-traditional work patterns where you may have 2 jobs, for example, 2 part-time jobs, or you may be a contractor or independent worker, or whatever your job occupation classification might be, don't let that deter you from applying. That could actually work in your favor. You can be an Uber driver or Lyft driver, for example. Don't feel that if you don't have a regular type 9 to 5 job, that's not going to work in your favor. So basically, with the selection process, I want to say this, that Margarita mentioned the selection process earlier. I found it to be really, really like a roller coaster ride. From the very beginning, from the 36,000 or so, all the way through the ending part of the process. I didn't think I stood a chance, actually. And when we actually went to the 5,000 level or so, or the 60, when it went down to 60, we had at my office, we had a little rally situation around my cubicle where people would come around and just say, oh, I was like watching a sports game or outcome or something. They were out cheering and shouting and saying, maybe you're in it to win it. You might become one of the finals, once selected. So it was really an exhilarating, but a very stressful experience, but nothing like it ever can be described in one's lifetime. That was one of the most interesting parts of the whole process. But as a person of color, I wanted to say also that diversity, the BSA did a very good job of having a mixed balance. And what we came up with, what they came up with as a final commission, consisting of 2 Asian Americans, 1 Pacific Islander, 1 Native American, 4 Latinos, just 3 Anglos. The balance just was perfect. There was a perfect match of individuals that came together. 14 separate individuals somehow came together and coalesced to make what we were, ultimately as a body of the commission. Yes.
So once on the commission, what was the time commitment like for you? Especially during the map drawing process. How did you manage, with your employer to have flexibility to carry out your role? And did you incur any financial hardships as a result?
It was hectic, very hectic, because no one has done anything like this before. So my employer had no idea what I was involved with. Well, they did, but they didn't know. There was no time off provisions in place, like jury duty or some type of internal mechanism. I worked for the city of LA, and I happened to work in a planning department where we had public hearings, a 14-day notice for public hearings there, as well as a 14-day notice for the state. So I was on a strict timeline to be responsible for 2 public hearing dates. So that was very interesting, an interesting challenge in my place. I had to use a lot of my vacation time. I actually used all of my vacation time. I used all of my sick leave time, even though I couldn't actually afford to get sick because there was nothing there. I mean, I could have just taken off and I got paid, of course. But we all of us, all 14 of us had sacrifices that we made. Mine, I'm just sharing my example, but we all took personal hits. But I don't want to say that in a discouraging way. I want to say that it was a labor of love. It was something that I would do again, over and over again. There's no experience like it. In my situation, I was on a 440 schedule, and that means that I worked from 8 until 6, Monday through Thursdays. I would leave work on Thursday, read my notes for a Friday meeting, for example, wherever it might be, and fly to wherever, Sacramento, be there for a 10 o'clock meeting, business meeting from 10 until whenever, 3 o'clock. We'd have public information meetings, public input meetings. The cycle just continued over and over and over, but it was so exciting. It was so exciting and so rewarding, ultimately, to be a part of that process. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm saying this to say that you really have to be up to it, to have your stamina and be alert and prepared at all times to be prepared for the challenge. Yeah.
One last question before we open it up from the Q&A. But leading a transparent and fair redistricting process in the state, especially being the first commission ever, was a massive responsibility with tremendous impact on all residents and communities for the next 10 years. In reflecting back at all that it entailed to be a commissioner, what were the kinds of skill sets, values, approaches that resulted most valuable for the commission to ultimately be successful?
Okay, I'll go to my notes now because I'm sort of rambling here. Well, number one, we liked each other. We all liked each other. When you put 14 people together, it's not easy. You don't know what you're going to end up with. So what occurred was that we didn't have any dogmatic extremists on any side politically. In today's environment, you know, that might seem kind of unusual, but back then we all sought common ground. We really were anxious to do and charged to do what was in the best interest of the people of the state of California. We knew it was a experimental, well, not experimental. We could not fail. Failure was no option. We were embarking on something new and different, and we basically had to coalesce, whether we wanted to or not. And I think we did a pretty good job at that. We had to listen and pay attention, even though this is one of the skills, to listen and pay attention, even though you're fatigued. That occurred both at our business meetings as well as our public input meetings. Some of those meetings lasted for hours. The business meetings would last for hours. We would go over one key issue for 2 or 3 hours sometimes until it was finally resolved, until we finally had some type of agreement. Some of our public input meetings lasted until midnight. Then we'd get up and have to be somewhere else the next day. Map reading is another good skill. You have to like to know and feel comfortable with maps, geography, landforms, environmental considerations. You have to be meticulous. Writing skills are very important because you really don't have a supervisor. So you don't have a second chance. And we had limited, minimal staff. So when we turned in reports, they had to be as thorough as possible. No one's perfect, of course, but you have to be very meticulous. We had to definitely deal with time management and be organized. And those are some of the key qualifications. I know I'm running out of time here, so I'm gonna just shut it off right there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andre, for sharing, a little bit about your experiences and reflections on being on the commission. So now I wanna open it up. We've been receiving a lot of questions. So some of these questions are open to any of the speakers. So first one, flights from Sacramento, are they reimbursed? So any types of flights, travels to meetings, what was that like?
Yes, they are reimbursed. Yes. Yes,
Perfect.
they are. And now the commission has a credit card situation that's been established, so it's not so difficult to go around, by putting that money up in advance.
Margarita, this question would be for you. So for those that do go on to the supplemental portion, when is that application due?
Okay, so for the second part of it, the application will be due in September 11th. So the initial application period ends August 9th. Then the supplemental application period will begin within a few days, but the applicants will get notifications immediately. You're immediately notified if you're tentatively eligible. You're notified at the end of every phase. You're notified of everything that you have to do. If you submitted part of your supplemental application and it's not completed yet and we're starting to get to the deadline, we'll remind applicants about that. We also require letters of recommendation, 3 letters of recommendation, so we'll have guidance on what your recommenders could put on there or can format it. And we will also let the applicant know if we haven't received all of them or when we've received all of them.
Perfect. Can City Council elected officials apply?
Yes, I believe they can. In fact, I'm going to try to look at my little notes here. We did have, I believe, one of the commissioners was a mayor, and he resigned when he became a commissioner, of course. But City Council, I'm pretty sure they can. Mr. Parvenu, you probably know the answer as well, because I think Mr. Yao was the mayor.
Yes, he was, yeah. Yes.
Perfect. So another question, Rey focused on having representation from each part of the community, but based on the application and qualifications, an uneducated person or a homeless person would have a very slim chance of getting on the commission. How are their interests being represented?
Well, I would say, Mr. Parvenu, you might want to answer this, but I believe that it's an open application period and selection process. It's going to be open to the public. We have contacted most of the libraries throughout the state so that anybody can come in and use some of their computers so that they can either, number one, apply online, or they can watch some of the information that's being live streamed. But I think and there's an opportunity for public comments throughout our process, and equally, I believe, throughout the process when the commission starts forming their drawing their maps, correct?
That's correct, yes. It is correct. And the entire and one thing about our commission is that we receive public comment in any form. We received over 27,000, I think, 27,000 written comments. And literally we had to receive, if someone, for example, in a restaurant, came and scribbled something on a napkin, we take that in, and because of transparency, that would become recorded as an entry. We were just so open to receiving information from, in terms of the question about would that person have an equal opportunity to become a commissioner, it depends on the application, and if he or she qualified, and that's BS responsible. Well, now it's the CSA's responsibility, but yeah, there's no ignoring of anyone's contribution in the process. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. So next question, does the auditor's office conduct outreach or communicate with California's tribal governments, and if so, in what ways?
Can you repeat that again? I cut in and out.
Yes. So the question is, does the auditor's office conduct outreach or communicate with California's tribal governments? And if so, in what ways?
Well, we're trying to conduct an inclusive process, and we're actually working with many. I think we had over 100 organizations that we were reaching out to, and trying to get their assistance in spreading the word. We had some on our first list of 100, and we are continuing to spread the word out to them. We send out email blasts on to all the groups, as well as to anyone who's signed up on our website. So if you haven't gone to our website, shapecaliforniasfuture.auditor.ca.gov, you should go there and sign up first of all, sign up to receive notifications, but then also to apply. And like I said, we are trying to work with a number, over 100 organizations to help us get all the word out. We've also reached out to representatives in the legislature, and so that they can post information that we have, and because they have such a wide reach. And really, like I said before, one thing we learned the first go round was that groups such as yours, all the groups like that are part of the coalition, any other organizations, community-based groups, they are a really critical part of the outreach program, of helping us get the word out and making sure that we are being inclusive, and that we do get to those populations that perhaps don't get information in the traditional form, or don't want to look at the listen to ads. I mean, we are still using some radio ads as well, and we're doing some of the same things we did last time, but differently as well. I mean, it's 10 years later, so we're trying to engage in a number of different ways.
Perfect. Cool. So what is the proportion of applicant by party so far?
By party so far, I think we have it on our website. I was going to pull it up right now, but let me pull it right now. This morning, I received our statistics report, and I'm sorry, I didn't have that currently available, but we have over 5,000 that have applied. And let me get to the parties themselves. So from the Democratic Party, we have about, looks like about 50% of the applicants are from the Democratic Party. From the Republican Party, there is about 22% from the Republican Party, and then the rest are from other parties or no party preference.
So the last question, can city planning commissioners apply?
We have information on our website. Okay.
Oh, go for it. Finish your thought, Margarita.
I was just saying, we have information. We have information on our website. We update the statistics on a regular basis, so anyone can go to our site and get the information. We have, and then on Mondays and Thursdays, we provide graphics that make it really easy to tell where the applications are coming from: demographic, political party, gender.
Perfect. So last question. Anyone who donated to any local or other campaign in this calendar year would they be eligible to serve on the commission? So again, the question is,
go
for it.
Okay, so the question is about how much the contribution, right? Mm-hmm. So if in the last 10 years, the applicant or a bona fide family member contributed $2,500 or more to any California Congressional, state, or local candidate public office in any calendar year. So it's by calendar year, so it's not like going to take what you contributed over every single year. It's by calendar year, and it's $2,500 or more.
Perfect. So want to close up with the Q&A. We are at time, but I want to thank everyone that submitted your questions Given the time, we apologize we cannot get to all of them. However, I will share the screen in a moment with the contact information of our presenters today so you can follow up with additional questions. We will be sharing the recording of this video chat soon after on the Redistricting California Collaborative's soon to be launched website, redrawcalifornia.org. Thank you to all our speakers and the California League of Conservation Voters Education Fund for being here and putting this together. And thanks to all of you who joined today. Your leadership is needed to ensure representation for all of us. And so apply today and get others to apply as well. So let me share just this last screen for folks to see the resources, the contact information of presenters and the resources of where to go. But again, have a great afternoon, everybody. And please reach out to any of us with additional questions that you still have. Have a great afternoon.